be visible. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Bray from Southern California News Group and the Pasadena Star News. I want to take note that I have my purple tie on tonight, neither red nor blue, because we're playing it right down the middle tonight. Right, thank you for joining us for tonight's forum. I want to thank our candidates for joining us. Sincere thanks for taking the time this evening. I know it's a big chunk of time for you, but we're truly grateful to have you here. I'd also like to thank Martin Gordon. We're grateful to partner with Martin and the Pasadena Community Coalition on so many different things these days. It's been a terrific partnership, and we're very grateful for their help, expertise, and wisdom. This evening, we'd also like to thank Justin Chapman, journalist and host from Pasadena Media's NewsRap Local. Thank you so much for coming. And I'd like to thank Brennan Dixson, our City Hall reporter from Pasadena Star News. Also, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to Kevin Sablon and Caroline Wong for managing our event this evening and for all the energy you've invested in this enterprise. And a special thank you to Star News readers and Pasadena's voters. We're very pleased and grateful to be able to present tonight's dialogue on the issues for you. And with that, here's our moderator for the evening, Mr. Martin Gordon.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for that introduction. Thanks again to the sponsors of this event, the Pasadena Star News, the Pasadena Community Coalition, and NewsRap Local. Good evening all and welcome to the 2022 Candidates Forum for Pasadena Districts 3, 5, and 7. I'm Martin Gordon, Chair of the Pasadena Community Coalition and your moderator for this evening. I'm sorry, I'm hearing someone in the background there. Mute yourself, please. The elections take place on Tuesday, June the 7th. The general municipal election for council districts will be held only if a candidate does not receive 50% of the votes, more than 50% of the votes in the primary election. Elected council members will sit in council for 4 years, beginning December 12th, 2022. All candidates were extended an invitation to attend this forum. Let's meet the candidates. First, John Kennedy, District 3, Incumbent. Welcome, John. Unmute yourself. I couldn't hear you, John. Unmute yourself.
My name is John Kennedy.
Okay, John, we're not ready for that yet. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make sure that you could hear me.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure that we're in sync. So I'm going to introduce everybody, then we'll get back to everybody. Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brenda Lamar, District 3 candidate. That's John. That's not Brandon. There you go. There's Brandon. Hi, Brandon, and welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Next, we have Jess Rivas, District 5 incumbent.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay, there's Jess. She's an incumbent who is running unopposed, but graciously agreed to be with us to speak to her constituents and answer questions. Thank you, Ms. Rivas. We really appreciate that. And so do your people. Next, we have Jason Lyon, District 7 candidate.
Hi, Martin.
Hi, Jason. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And next, we have Alan Shea, District 7 candidate. Hi, Alan.
Hello.
You look debonair there, young man. And Saran Hajian, District 7, will not be in attendance. Now, okay, I like to see him, but we've got to move on. He's got a good profile. We're going to move on to our panelists. The panelists who we asking questions today are Brennan Dixson, reporter for the Star News. There's a good-looking guy in it. And next we have Justin Chapman. There, you see him on the other side there. I like that.
Martin.
Journalist and host of NewsRap Local. Welcome, both of you. This is going to be a lively event. We got some good reporters here. So thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Our timekeeper for today will be Caroline Wong, Director of Communications, Star News. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
I don't think we're going to get a chance to see Caroline. Here's the format for today. Listen closely, because sometimes I get confused. So Tom or anybody else back there, make sure I'm getting it all right. We will begin with a general question to all the candidates. You will have 1 minute to respond. We will then move to the panel for a series of more specific questions. Each candidate then will have 2 minutes to respond to the question uninterrupted. Then each candidate will have an opportunity for rebuttal, 30 seconds. Candidate will be notified when 10 seconds remain. As moderator, I will advise you when your time is up and we will move on. Candidates will alternate as the first responder to the questions. I'm sorry, dear, what did I do here? At the end of this 2-minute round, we'll have a lightning round using the same format, but candidates will only have 30 seconds to respond and there will be no rebuttal. At the end of the lightning round, there will be one last general question with 1 minute to respond. Any questions on the format? Just on the format. If not, let's begin. First question will be asked by the moderator. It's just a general question to get us warmed up. Why should Pasadena vote for you? And this is just a 1 minute, quick 1 minute answer. And we'll start with Mr. Kennedy.
My name is John Kennedy. It has been my honor and privilege to serve on the City Council for 9 years. I was born and reared in Pasadena, a Blair High School graduate, University of Southern California, and Howard Law School, and I'm dedicated to making our city a better place to live. I led the effort to establish our Community Police Oversight Commission and to require body-worn cameras. I'm a strong advocate for affordable housing with 4 new developments being built now in District 3, one for previously homeless seniors with full wraparound services and one for 180 unit of workforce housing, just to name 2. In my next term, I will lead the charge to build 3,000 new units of affordable housing, with 15% of those reserved for extremely low income families. So I ask for your support and I seek re-election to our City Council. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, John. Mr. Lamar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brenda Lamar, born and raised in Pasadena, grew up in Pasadena schools, attended city programs, and I've also worked for the City of Pasadena Park and Recreation Department. Currently, I serve as the chair of the Human Relations Commission, and I've been on that commission for about 6 years. In the community, I was a part of the team who created the Bill of Rights, Community Bill of Rights in 2020, which designed, created, organized, and advocated for the Community Civilian Oversight Commission. I was the first person running that endorsed and supported rent control. I was the first person that supported also, that organized for police reform, housing, immigration rights, reproductive rights, workers' rights, and children and youth services. Not the first person, but I advocated for it.
10 seconds.
I am running because I want safer streets and to stop gun violence. I'm running because I want housing for all to be affordable for everyone. And I believe that it's time for all of us to be one Pasadena in the community and have accountability across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Ms. Rivas.
Hey everyone, I'm Jess Rivas and I've been honored to represent District 5 over the past 16 months. And I'm running to continue serving because I want to make sure that Pasadena is a place that works for everyone. And since I've been on the council, I've done that by doing a number of things. I've supported affordable housing and new ways to support our unhoused neighbors, for example, through tiny homes. I've stood firmly with renters who are the majority of Pasadenans and also the majority of District 5 residents by supporting rent control and also opposing ending our eviction moratorium prematurely. I've stood against unlimited campaign contributions, and I've worked to protect our environment, just to name a few. And so that's been my record so far, and that's exactly what you can expect from me when I'm elected to a full term. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jess. I like that. Boy, that's quick and to the point. Mr. Lyon.
Thank you. My name is Jason Lyon. I am a candidate in District 7. I'm an attorney by trade and the current vice chair of the Pasadena Planning Commission. And I'm running to create a more livable, walkable, and sustainable Pasadena. I have current real world experience in balancing our need for housing that's affordable at every income level with our desire to maintain and preserve the character of Pasadena. And I am the only candidate in District 7 who has signed Pasadena's pledge to run a fair, honest, and transparent campaign. I am proud to be endorsed by Representative Judy Chu, Supervisor Catherine Barger, State Senator Anthony Portantino, and our current council member, Vice Mayor Andy Wilson, and I would be honored to serve as your council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And Mr. Shea.
Hello, my name is Alan Shea. I'm a product of Pasadena from 5 years of age up until now. And I attended PUSD, graduated from John Muir, graduated from the University of Southern California, also graduated from law school, hold a broker's license, have owned my own business since graduating from college. Immediately after graduating, a colleague of mine from high school, he and I joined forces to create a firm that he and I both still are contributing to this community, both with employment, with beliefs of what the community can offer, and a true understanding of lived experience as to how to bring fairness, balance, housing, and opportunities to this community. One of the things that I enjoy is being a political scientist, to make sure that we have the balance that we need in our governance so the voice of the people are heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Well, that does it for our first opening question, and this kind of warms us up for things to come. Now we will go to our 2-minute questions. A reminder, you'll have 2 minutes to respond. You will have 1 minute for rebuttals. And the next question will be asked by Justin Chapman.
Hey, everyone. Good evening. Okay, the question is, what kind of city manager do you think Pasadena needs and should have? Is the process working? Does the relationship between the city council, staff, and city manager need to evolve, and how? Mr. Lamar, you're up first with your 2-minute answer. Remember to unmute.
So I think that the next city manager should be somebody who is very transparent, somebody who I would like to see, somebody who comes from the community, who knows Pasadena, who knows how Pasadena works. I would like to see somebody who is definitely would like to see more engagement in our city in regards to our police department, accountability in regards to our police department, not only just our police department, but all of our departments being accountable for the spending and appropriation of funds. And not only that, but also the programs that we have in our city that will be for every single person. I think as of right now, I would not say that the search for the city manager is very transparent. I think that we have to have more community input in the search for this city manager. And I think that we can do a better job. As of right now, I think that there's so much more that we would have liked to see from our old city manager, but I am hopeful that our next city manager will take us to the next level and where our city has to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamar. Now, Mr. Kennedy, unmute for your 2-minute answer.
First of all, I would say that the current process in selecting a new city manager is working. I've been a part of selecting city managers in the past, even before I became an elected member of the city council. Obviously, we need someone who has an established track record in dealing with complex issues in a diverse community. And as we have all witnessed over the past 3 years, particularly, but even before that, we need a city manager who is not afraid to step in to very difficult situations and provide leadership in finding solutions, whether it be with the police department, parks and recreation, our finance department, et cetera, including water and power and public works. So in all of our departments, critical to our success or the success of the next city manager is that unique relationship that he or she must have not only with their department heads, but with the community leaders and just regular citizens who from day to day need quality city services. So I'm optimistic that we will receive someone, that we will convince someone to be a part of this city who really loves people more than loves government and understands the heart of people. And that's going to make us a better city. That's going to make city government more responsive
10 seconds.
to the needs of our community. And I'm a part of that. And I want all of you on the line to be a part of that process as well. That's called good government.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Lamar, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal.
No rebuttal.
Okay, let's move on to Ms. Rivas for your 2-minute answer.
Well, thank you so much. This is a really important question, and it's one that I've been thinking a lot about lately because we are in the middle of that process. It probably is one of the most important decisions that we as the council will make. In terms of what I'm looking for, of course, we want someone with incredible technical skills and abilities and leadership. All those things almost go without saying. I know we're going to get a really great crop of candidates because we are a really amazing city and we're going to attract people far and wide. So I'm not too concerned about getting someone with those technical skills. What I really am looking for beyond that is someone who's going to be a partner with the council to enact bold and ambitious policy to address these major issues that we're facing. The day-to-day governance and inertia of government, it can kind of just roll along without, much, as things are, or I'm sorry, it can just kind of roll along without much change or input, or just the inertia will carry us in the same direction we are going if we don't push things the way they need to go. And so I'm looking for someone who can be a partner with the council and shares our vision to really do those bold things and not just kind of be a caretaker for the day-to-day city governance. In terms of changes or different things I'd like to see in a next city manager. So I've had the honor and privilege of working with both Steve Ramel and now Cynthia Kurtz as an interim. And I think something that I've really come to appreciate through 2 budget cycles is that the council is brought into that discussion rather late. It's, these discussions or the process starts very early in the fall, essentially, I believe, with the departments, and they're working for months at a time on their budgets. And I would love to work with a city manager who can bring the council in earlier to have those bigger holistic conversations about our budget and is willing to engage with us on that in that regard. So it's not just, okay, it's May, time to vote up and down on the budget, but we're able to have those bigger conversations together and have more of a
10 seconds.
A philosophical discussion early on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivas. Okay, Mr. Lyon, unmute for your 2-minute answer.
Thank you. This is an important question. I think it goes without saying that we need someone who is a strong fiscal manager, has managed a large municipal budget before, is a personnel manager with experience and skill. But the qualities, I think, that would set apart the right candidate for me are someone who is visionary and creative and forward-thinking and empathetic. On the visionary front, we need someone who is able to look beyond this budget year and this week in the city to help the council envision what this city is going to look like in 5 years and 10 years. We have some serious challenges facing the city, particularly economic challenges, environmental challenges that require action and thought now. And we need someone who is able to engage in a robust dialogue with the public and with the council about how to address those needs before they become dire. We also, I think it's critical that the city manager really runs the city. I don't know that people really understand that. I think sometimes people think that it's the day-to-day management is the mayor and the council, but really the city manager is the chief administrative officer of the city. And we need someone who understands the human impact of the decisions the city makes and is able to engage on a human level and to understand the emotion of the community around some of the big issues that our city faces. And in terms of the relationship between the council and the city manager, I think it's important. Our council has traditionally ceded some of its authority under the city charter. All authority rests with the city council, and the city council should exercise that vigorously as needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Mr. Shea, unmute for your 2-minute answer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the question, because I think this question is pivotal for Pasadena moving forward. I say this because in the last 40 years, I've been in business 40 years, since 81. I've been involved with every city manager in one form or another. And I really think the key moving forward is having a city manager who truly can understand the voice of the community. And the reason why I put it in this content is because the administration aspects of our city is going to function with or without whomever we get. Okay, and we've already demonstrated that. We've been able to make a smooth transition from one city manager to another. You have a great team of supporting cast. All these things are there to make sure that our city function well. The type of manager is like a quarterback on a football team. He has to be responsive and know each player so that he can get the best out of those players and get the best results to win. And when the team wins, everyone wins. That's what the city of Pasadena wants out of a city manager, for everyone to win. And in order to do that, that individual must understand the difference between how to apply democracy versus how to really govern the city through the governance elements that he or she may have available to her. That seemed to be a tough balance. But I think if this transparent process that we're
10 seconds.
hoping for will bring about that kind of individual, then we'll have a good chance. If not, I think we're going to have a repeat of our past, and I think we can overcome that because we've learned from our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Lyon, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal.
No rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question will come from Brennon Dixson.
Hello to our audience. Hello to all involved. My question is, it's been 4 years since residents voted on a ballot measure to bring legal cannabis to the city, and Pasadena only recently opened its final dispensary. In a community that bore the brunt of the war on drugs, what is your plan to enforce social equity compliance? Mr. Kennedy, please unmute yourself and provide a 2-minute answer.
From the beginning of the process, the city manager met with each city council member. My protestations were as follows: that the community that received the brunt of the negative police activity and law enforcement activities needed to be given an opportunity to participate at the table. That would mean, in many cases, small businesses or small operators. The city manager at that time, Steve Vermel, did not believe that was a logical way to move forward. And everything that followed beyond that supported larger cannabis operators. So from the beginning, I let my disconcertion or disgust be known not only to the city manager, but to my colleagues on the city council. I'm 110% in support of social equity then, and I'm supportive of it now. Because of a recent decision by the council, there are 3 opportunities for cannabis operators in District 3. Why not have one of those, at least one of those, to be from someone who was either formerly incarcerated, who looks like me, or who is Latino or African American? I will not be satisfied unless that happens. There are other colleagues on the city council who agree with me, and I'm hopeful that through the efforts of Councilmember Tyron Hampton, along with the full city council, that we will get that
10
social
seconds.
equity that is required to make our cannabis program in the city of Pasadena fair and just, and take into account
That's time.
past injustices to African Americans and Latinos.
Mr. Lamar, please unmute yourself and share your plan to enforce social equity compliance. 2 minutes.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to cannabis industry, being in a community that has friends, family, and neighbors that I know that have been negatively associated with this by being charged, by being arrested, I think it's very important for us to have social equity in a part of this. And when this comes to our cannabis, the first thing I say before we even get to the cannabis is I think that we have to start with Expunged Records. I think that's the first step, because we did, with arrest and, people having those records on their arrest record or their background, we have to have expungements. And that's the first step to really being able to have social equity in the cannabis industry, because you can be arrested and then still not qualify to even have a license to own your own shop because you have that record. And so I think that's the first step, is we have to have that expungement. The next thing I'll say is I think that the first opportunities for social for this incubator, I think we have to create incubator programs, meaning that the first steps is we have to have people that are from Pasadena to take part in these programs before we expand it to anyone else. I think that's how we reinvest back into our community. And so I don't think we should just have one person in District 3 or one individual or business in District 3 that can actually do this, that's of color or of descent. But I think all 3 of them has to come from Pasadena and has to come from the neighborhoods and the areas who are really affected by
10
this.
seconds.
And so I'm definitely in support of this initiative to have social equity in Pasadena, especially in District 3 Northwest, where most of the arrests happen.
That's time.
Mr. Kennedy, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal if you would like.
No rebuttal other than to say that it's a non-starter unless we see as a community some African-American or Latino operators in the city. In District 3, there was only supposed to be 1 cannabis operator per district. That's what the voters approved. The council overlooked the wishes of the voters and decided that they would allow 3 only in 1 district, and that's District 3. And because District 3 is heavily minority, let's make sure that the cannabis operators in District 3, at least 1, if not 2, are African American or Latino, because they were the ones who were disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, the quote unquote war on drugs. It's a war on Black and brown people. Thank you.
Mr. Lamar, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal if you would like.
I definitely agree. I think that, in some ways we are still fighting this war on drugs in our community. And we have to do a better job at creating opportunities for District 3. And so I definitely agree. I think that every one of those opportunities should be from people that is from Pasadena that has been affected by it. And I do stand by that because, we're still affected by it. You still see the results of it in our city. And so I do stand by that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rivas, will you please share your plan to enforce social equity compliance? 2 minutes and you're unmuted. You're good.
Great. Yeah. So I am very interested in establishing a separate social equity permit process. The idea, of course, as we've been discussing, is that those who have been most affected, most harmed by our past cannabis laws would get the assistance to enter this new legal market. However, I think I saw an article a while back, and I've been hearing things across the state about different equity programs that haven't been very effective at reaching that goal. That the kind of the well-moneyed groups, the groups that have the funding, are the ones who are still able to take advantage of the programs that have been established. So I'm hoping that we can learn a lot from what other cities and jurisdictions have tried to make sure that our social equity program is one that works and actually achieves that goal. I know we already have steps in motion to get one in place. At least last night, the city had a community meeting on this topic to get the folks' thoughts and hear their input on what they would like a program like this to look like. I haven't watched the video yet because I was speaking to residents in my district in person last night, but I'm sure we'll see the video, and I'm sure we got a lot of great feedback. So I'm looking forward to continuing that process. We're just getting started. It's going to be a long one, but we need to make sure we do it as efficiently as possible and in a way that actually helps the people that we want to help.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Mr. Shea, will you please unmute yourself and tell us your plan to enforce social equity compliance in Pasadena?
Well, thank you. And I really enjoy that question. And the reason why is because I'm a big proponent of creating stability for future generations. And I believe that in order to create an equitable position with the cannabis business, at this juncture, we would need to create a real strong base. And the only way that I can see it being sustainable is to team up. I think we would need to partner up with nonprofits, with schools, with people who are very familiar with this particular industry, because it is quite integral, to say the least. And in order for a small business or first-time entrepreneur to get into this arena, it's not going to be an easy transition. And one of the things, if we're going to talk about creating social equity, is really about how to create the sustainability of that, not just throwing out all of these concepts and ideals. I know from my own personal experience, my family's 50 years as the oldest Black business in Altadena, we've done it in that manner. We've learned how to bring community in with partnerships and make our business survive through recessions and through COVID. And I believe that through that experiment, that journey, that anyone can sustain and have real social equity, just as I've done in my business of 40 years, and just as my family business of 50 years, the Little Red Hen, has done and continues to serve the community. So I know from a proven track record that it can be done, and it can be done in any business.
10 seconds.
If the combination between the different entities are there for the same interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. 2 minutes. What is your plan to enforce social equity compliance?
Thank you. It is unanimous. I also support the creation of a parallel permitting process to create social equity in the cannabis industry. For me, that program needs to have two key components. The first is the one we've been talking about, which is a permitting system that at least attempts to offset historic inequities in the criminal justice system that affected Black and Brown people primarily. So that we're getting licenses into the hands of people who actually suffered in the system previously. Like a couple of my fellow panel members have mentioned, I think to make it effective, we need to have a program that helps with access to seed funding. We need a program that helps with entrepreneurship training so that we don't just throw people out, hand them a license and throw them out to live or die in the system. So that people have a reasonable prospect of creating a working business. And then the second piece for me that is an important equity component is looking at where we site these. So right now we have a series of kind of high end and relatively pricey boutiques along Colorado Boulevard. And I think we want to make sure that as part of the social equity program, we're creating access to cannabis as a medical resource all over the city and for communities across Pasadena. Thanks.
Mr. Shea, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal if you would like. Please unmute yourself and your timer will begin.
Yeah, I just really believe the key to any type of sustainable business is not speculation. It has to come from a concrete program. It has to come from something that has been provable. There's all these unpredictable pitfalls that exist in the cannabis industry. Certainly from the crew of clients that I have in that industry who have these challenges. And I'm sure that without somebody who has a good awareness, a community that has a good support base, and someone who really is fully prepared to take on that stress, because it's still a lot of loose ends regarding legislation on the federal level, you gotta have somebody who comes into that arena with a good team and somebody who knows how to cultivate long-term planning. And that's the only way I can see it surviving.
10 seconds.
Mr. Lyon, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal to the rebuttal. I see you.
No rebuttal. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I will send it back up to the moderator.
Thank you. Our next question is going to come from Justin Chapman. It's question number 4.
During a recent emergency meeting in response to gun violence in the Northwest Pasadena community, locals suggested a Pasadena First Hiring Initiative to spur the hiring of African Americans and Latinx communities who are facing a high rate of unemployment. What would be your plan to create jobs? First up, Mr. Lamar, with your 2-minute answer.
Thank you. I think the first part is to, number one, as I stated before, help to get records expunged. You can't get a job that pays good money until you get your record expunged. We have people that are dealing with that right now. And I believe in second chances. I believe in 100 chances if you turn your life around. And so I think that's the first step. The second step is, I think, staying with the cannabis. I think we should take that 4% tax that the cannabis is giving the people who have cannabis businesses and giving in Pasadena and create job opportunities with that, to help to actually train on how to get a job, how to sustain a job. But not only that, but what businesses to start, because everybody doesn't want to be employed by someone. Some people might want to start businesses. And so how do we encourage and educate our community on how to do that? The next thing that I'll do is expand the MASH program to create more opportunities in Pasadena for more Black and Brown community members to actually be a part of the public works department, and to get that experience and to take that experience to the next level. And then not only that, but expand the Rose program so that it can continue to be year round, like it was in the time of COVID that we've had, to expand those programs to opportunities for our young people throughout the city to help engage them and keep them engaged throughout the city as well. And then the last thing I'll say is to really engage and support our local nonprofits. So nonprofits like Flint Ridge, who has a program, apprenticeship program to actually teach working skills for individuals in the community. And so I
10
believe that we
seconds.
have areas to do it. I think that we just have to expand those areas and making sure that it's viable to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Lamar. Councilmember Kennedy, unmute for your 2-minute answer.
Repeat the question.
What is your plan to create jobs, particularly in the Northwest community?
It is a difficult prospect to think that the city government is going to create jobs. Jobs are created by the private sector, but let me say that I have been endorsed by the Los Angeles Orange County Building Trade Association. And in that endorsement, along with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, we are going to create programs for the formerly incarcerated, those who have some kind of impediment related to employment, to actually go through an apprentice program and to be a part of a union and receive union wages. That could be $40 to $60 an hour. So that's a program that will come about under my leadership with the two organizations that brought me into the discussion and certainly has endorsed at least one of the entities. The Los Angeles and Orange County Building Trade has endorsed my candidacy. Additionally, long-standing, I worked for the Flint Ridge Foundation. I worked for J.L. Mosley. I incorporated the business. I served on the different giving charitable organizations for the Mosley family. So I'm intimately involved in their programs and have spoken numerous times at their graduation and their training programs for those young men and women who were formerly incarcerated and having a difficult time finding employment. But we got them through union programs
10 seconds.
that allowed them an opportunity to become really middle-class citizens and homeowners. I will continue that effort and expand that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Lamar, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal.
Yeah, just one thing. I think one of the things that really gets me in Pasadena is that we create programs rather than expanding programs that are already in existence. And I have no problem with creating programs that are working, but I think that we also have programs that are already in existence that work very well. And if we expand those programs, as I stated before, you don't have to create an apprenticeship program at Flint Ridge. We have it already. It's already in District 3. What we need to do is expand that program and making sure that that program actually have access to more unions, more labor union, so that we can expand the services in our district, and not only in our district, but in our community. I think it's very important for us to stop trying to recreate the wheel and actually get on the wheel that has already been created and keep
10
that wheel
seconds.
going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamar. Let's go to Councilmember Rivas for your 2-minute answer.
Excuse me. I think
Sorry,
according to
apologies.
the rules,
Yeah.
that I have an opportunity to have a 1-minute rebuttal or make a comment.
You do, Councilmember. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would say that several of the young people who are on this call today had an opportunity to participate in the federally funded CETA program, which has now evolved into our Summer Rose program. So in some respect, I misspoke. We took hundreds of young people, primarily from Northwest Pasadena, hired them in the city of Pasadena through a summer program that did not guarantee them a job per se, but gave them skills and exposure to jobs that the private sector or even the public sector could call upon those individuals and provide them with an opportunity. So the city
10
does
seconds.
have a role. Sometimes that role is limited, and MASH is another opportunity that I've greatly supported.
That's
as a
time.
council member. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, council member. Apologies for the oversight. Now let's go to council member Rivas for your 2-minute answer.
Thank you. And this is such an important question because it's not just about a job, it's about a good job. We're seeing so many people are working multiple low-paying jobs. We're seeing, the gig economy. People are just trying to scrape by doing whatever they can. But what we all need is a good, decent paying job with benefits and where you're treated with dignity and respect. And I'm going to echo a theme that's already emerging. And we really need to partner with labor because that's their mission as well, too. Their mission is to fight for workers, stand up for workers, make sure they're treated fairly, and make sure that they get those jobs. Apprenticeship programs have already been mentioned. That's essential wherever there's synergy between the city itself and labor unions to have apprenticeship programs or have apprentices work on city projects. That's something we absolutely should be working at, and just supporting labor in general, because we share the same mission to bring as many good paying, good benefit jobs to the city. And so that's what I have been focused on and what I would continue to focus on moving forward.
Thank you, council member. Mr. Lyon, your plan to create jobs, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think there are a couple of components here. I guess the first in my district is that we don't often talk about the shootings in Northwest when I'm out knocking on doors. And so I would like to facilitate a conversation in the city around being one Pasadena and not two Pasadenas. And that has been an important part of my campaign in my district to talk about some of the issues that are happening across the city that we might not necessarily see in my neighborhood. You framed the question around the recent spate of shootings in Northwest and then tied that to jobs. So I want to address the sort of underlying implication of that question, which is when a sort of lack of hope leads to violence. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the city has a lot of roles to play in that process, from early childhood education and making sure that kids have access to resources from early in life, making sure that we have robust mental health programs to deal with anxiety and frustration, making sure we're partnering with community organizations so that we're not reinventing the wheel, as Brandon said, when offering people alternatives to violence. As to jobs in particular, I will echo what Brandon and Jess said, which is that I'm inclined to partner with labor and to make sure that we have our own access to apprentice programs inside unions in the city. And that in those, there are incentives to hiring
10 seconds.
Individuals with a record. Particularly on any construction project that has city funding in it, I'm a strong proponent of project labor agreements
That's time.
that include local hire provisions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Now, Mr. Shea, unmute for your 2-minute answer.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate these type of questions. The reason why I can humble myself to them is because I'm the 8th of 13 siblings. My mom was a widow, and we had to learn how to formulate a community, not only in our home, but throughout the community. And during that time and point, we probably owned somewhere near 10 businesses amongst our family alone. What I learned from that is really the sustainability of businesses and middle classes really comes at the heart of the community, wanting that to happen, and the government making sure they understand the voice of the community to make that happen. In my opinion, looking at District 7, especially in the South Lake District, I think we have a golden opportunity to create a slew of jobs. between new opportunities with companies and different forms of employees coming in with shadow programs that can be created for young people who are attending PHS, Blair and John Muir. There's tons of opportunity that can be made, but it has to be something that's not speculated. We have to really craft a way to get businesses back in our community and then create a real plain or even playing ground that will benefit not only community, it will benefit Blacks, it will benefit Hispanics, it will benefit the city. And I say this because I've lived it. These are my lived experiences that I'm sharing at this moment, and I know they work. And not only I know that they worked when I was growing up, but we also implemented some of those when
10
after the
seconds.
recession, as the chair of Northwest, we implemented shadow programs, local community programs, and I
That's
started
time.
the foundation myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Lyon, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal.
No, I'm good. I very much appreciated that answer. Thank you.
Okay, back to Martin.
I believe
he still has a 1-minute rebuttal if he wants it.
Okay, oh, even if the first rebuttal, gotcha. Go ahead, Mr. Shea.
This is back to Mr. Shea.
You're muted.
This is back. Thank you.
okay. I was saying earlier that the beauty of community is bringing something consistent and solid to our community. It's very difficult hearing all the speculation that goes on, especially as we've experienced recessions, COVID, and other financial challenges we've had. We can start small, we can start effective, and I believe we can do this in District 7 by building on businesses that make it work for everyone and provide jobs. And that's what I hope to see as City Council for District 7 take place, and not speculation. Thank you.
Thank you. And now back to Martin.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 5, and that will be asked by Mr. Dixon.
Hello again, everybody. My question is, even those who are charged with propelling the process, including the Civilian Oversight Committee, appear to be disappointed with where the city stands on improving police accountability. Does the panel need more clout? Does the structure need a shakeout? What is next for the Oversight Committee, in your opinion? Councilman Kennedy, please unmute yourself, and 2 minutes.
Well, when I first suggested that we needed some form of oversight of the Pasadena Police Department, the then chair of the Public Safety Committee mentioned to me that there's really no appetite for that, but I pressed forward anyway, and ultimately got, I think, 1 or at least 3 members of the City Council to vote for some form of oversight of the Pasadena Police Department. There are extraordinary constraints on the Pasadena City Council that come from the Police Officer Bill of Rights. We have to abide by that. And we also have to abide by the charter of the city of Pasadena. Those are constraints, guardrails that unless the voters get directly involved, it'll be difficult to overcome. But nevertheless, I didn't give up. I kept moving forward, pressing for oversight of the Pasadena Police Department. And what really precipitated the success more than any one thing that happened in the world was the horrific death of George Floyd. And it got all of my city council members on the same page to actually vote for civilian oversight of the Pasadena Police Department. Yes, I agree that it needs more teeth, if you will, but this was never an end all. This was a start of a process where I initially got no support at all, and then got a form of oversight. And we are now getting ready to select the independent auditor. And I think the independent auditor will offer leadership for the body and for the city council as
10
well.
seconds.
And we also still have the Public Safety Committee, which is chaired by the mayor of the city of Pasadena. So there's still work to be done. I agree. Thank you.
Mr. Lamar, will you please unmute and will you share if you believe the commission needs more clout? Does the structure need a shakeout? What is next in your opinion? 2 minutes.
Thank you. I definitely think that the commission needs more clout. But let me start by saying this. The only reason why we have a civilian oversight committee is because of the community. The community made it known that we wanted one, even after the shooting of George Floyd and even after the killing of Anthony McClain, or the knee on the back of George Floyd and the killing of Anthony McClain. We have made it clear that we wanted it. The civilian oversight commission is now in place because of the community, because of the voices of the community. And I think we have to go back to the basics of empowering the voices of the community. It was the community that said it. It was the community that brung it out. It was the community that was marching day in and day out, 600, 700 people to City Hall saying what we wanted and what we needed. It was the community that came out every single Monday to talk to City Hall, to our council, to our city council about the needs of the community and the wants of the community. And one of those wants was the Civilian Oversight Commission. And so I want to make it very clear that it is because of the community that it is now in place, because of the power of our voices and because of the power of unity. The next thing I think that we have to do is that we can't just leave it up to the commission. I think the commission has to be in partnership and is vice versa with our city council. That our commission can not only be the only people that has teeth, but our city council has to raise up their voices like Councilmember Tyrone Hampton does every single week for accountability with our officers. We have yet to see any accountability with our officers in Pasadena. And so we have to have people in these seats in city council who are going to speak up every single week until we see the accountability that the community really wants to see. And let me say this, lives are definitely at stake. So we have to do something. We have to do something, and we have to do something now. Thank you.
Councilman John Kennedy, you have the option at a rebuttal if you would like. Please unmute yourself and the timer will begin.
Thank you very much. For 6 years, I labored, not alone, to find a pathway forward for community oversight of the Pasadena Police Department. This was before the death of George Floyd. It has always been for good legislation that involves the community, that the community is involved right from the beginning. No doubt about it. But it took the leadership of one council member to convince the other council members and the mayor that it was the right thing to do. My appointee to the Oversight Commission is Don Matthews, someone who lost a son to police violence and was in fact a training officer
10
for
seconds.
the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Critically important for the leadership of that body. And yes, we are going to listen to that body and they will affect public policy in the city of Pasadena. So thank you.
Mr. Lamar, if you would like to say something, please unmute yourself and you will have a minute.
Only thing that I'll say is I believe that in Pasadena and communities around, we have to understand that one person cannot do it all. It has to be a community effort. And we've seen that not only with the Civilian Oversight Commission, but we also seen it with rent control, being that rent control just received over 20,000 signatures and 15,000 of those signatures were actually accounted for. And now we're celebrating that rent control is going to be on the ballot. So it's the community that pushes our efforts forward. And I think that's important for all of us to remember and understand.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rivas, I can repeat the question if you would like, but will you share your opinion on what is next for the Oversight Commission?
I'm good. I think number one, first off, the commission should have the full extent of power allowed under the law. As was raised before, there's a lot of limitations, unfortunately, but whatever they can have, they should have. And if there are areas where they think they should have more and then requires a change in law, we should advocate for those changes to be made at the state level. It's still early. The commission got off to a slow start, unfortunately. That takes some time to ramp up with the IPA that was initially appointed. And then unfortunately that IPA left to take a different job. And so we just, I believe it's just on this Monday or the previous Monday, approved a new IPA. So hopefully they will be able to get up and running with the commission. They'll be able to get up and running with the commission. I do want to mention with the IPA though, the first, I was proud to be the only council member when the first IPA came up for approval in last year, that I was the only council member to oppose their being appointed, because they served as a defense attorney for law enforcement for about a decade. And so I was proud to point that out and acknowledge that is not the ideal person to serve as an IPA. And the new IPA that was selected and we approved has a much better track record, I think, and we'll have the we'll get the earn the trust of the community much more easily for that reason. And then the last thing I just want to point out is that a new issue has come up that the commission just took up and will come back to the council, and that's the police use of military equipment. And by state law, that is basically teed up for the commission to really sink its teeth into and provide its input, and for the council to then adopt policy based on the community's input in general. So I look forward to doing that when that comes back up to the council in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Shea, please unmute yourself, and you will have 2 minutes to share your opinion on what's next for the Oversight Commission.
Well, I'd like to, again, thank you for this question, because if anyone has been following me, they know I do a daily advocacy about police accountability. And the reason for that is because my lived history here in Pasadena has been quite extensive, and certainly as the chair of the Northwest and commissioner over the last 4 terms has shown me that it's imperative to have the ability to hold police accountable when police are required to have such action asserted against them. I love our police department. I think we have a great police department as a structure, but I believe we have some systemic challenges within the department that needs to be addressed. And if we don't have the courage through our new commission to exercise that, then they will not be effective. And I say this because this commission is not the first time we've tried to have an oversight panel or body to try and hold police accountable. That's a very difficult job to do because of the power and the union that the police has. What I would encourage is the voters make sure that they have someone who understands this. And if they haven't lived these experiences in our community and really know how to go about finding a balanced engagement with the police, it will continue to repeat itself, because the commission that we have did not just come about because of George Floyd. It really came about because of Anthony McClain. That's when they voted it right after his death. And I know that was a result of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Lyon, if you are unmuted, you have 2 minutes to provide an answer yourself.
Thank you. I think it's too soon to know if we need to make any structural changes with the commission. I think they had their first meeting last October. So we're only 7 months in. And as Councilmember Rivas pointed out, 2 months in, we lost the independent police auditor, and we just hired one this week. So in many ways, their work is really just getting started. So I think we need to watch and wait and see how it works and be willing to tweak the system as we go. I think the real proof of the effectiveness of the system as it's designed now will be after we hire a new police chief. And you know, for me, it feels very important that the police chief be willing to really partner with the Civilian Oversight Commission to have a meaningful and frank and transparent dialogue with the community. If that happens, then I think the current structure of the commission could be great. If that doesn't happen, that's what we need to look at, whether the commission needs a different kind of authority. But really our work in this area is just getting started. So I don't think we know yet if any changes need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shea, if you have a rebuttal, you
Yes,
have 1
I
minute.
do. With all due respect to the comment made earlier, it is absolutely imperative that the commission has the authority. For anyone to say that they should not have the authority to make the necessary recommendations, even if it leads to firing an officer, that is absurd, because the police will be policing themselves. That will defeat the whole objective of this commission. And if he doesn't understand it or people don't understand it, this commission is not going to last. As I said, we've been down this road before. And I think that the commission is a great group of individuals, very outstanding. I'm totally impressed. I've reached out to almost all of them to commend them, because it's a great collection of thinkers. Let them think and let them use their experiences to bring about the voice of the people and the
10
actions
seconds.
that they've been given by the charter of this commission. Thank you.
Mr. Lyon, if you have a rebuttal, you will have 1 minute as well.
Well, I believe Mr. Shea might have misheard my answer, but I certainly didn't say anything about taking authority away from the commission. The commission now has the authority to look into anything it deems appropriate. Really, the only authority it doesn't have now is subpoena power, and it remains to be seen if we need to offer that authority. But I think we have crafted a commission that has sufficient authority to do the work it needs to do if the city is cooperating. So when we have a new city manager and a new chief of police, that'll be when we really see how the city's interacting with the commission. Thanks.
Thank you. We will send it back over to Gordon.
Okay. That's me, Martin. Thank you. Next question will come from Justin Chapman. This is question number 6.
Thank you. Violent crimes have stunned the community in the past year and beyond. What steps need to be taken to assure that the city is safe? Let's start with Mr. Lamar. Please unmute yourself for your 2-minute answer.
Thank you. I think, well, no, I don't have to think. District 3 has been the most affected by gun violence in the entire community since the last year. We've had the killing of the 13-year-old who was murdered inside of his home playing his own game. And then we had the murder of Jamal sitting outside of his own house. And then we had the murder of the 15-year-old sitting in the car. And that's just the murders. We're not even talking about the shootings. So something has to be done. And here's what I think has to be done. I think we have to go back to a prevention intervention structure. And I am the only one that would be on council that has that background. Currently, in my position right now, I have that background of serving over 31 communities throughout the United States of America in my position on prevention, intervention, and crime reduction. And we have to put people with lived experience in the community to help combat violence in our community. That's number one. Number two, I think we have to have more engagement with our community members in the community. Something that I expressed to the last chief on a personal conversation is I think that we need it. And I heard some people talk about it yesterday at the public safety meeting, but we need more officers to be in our parks, and not in their cars, but in bikes. And I'm actually happy to see that actually happening. Right now, that's happening, to have engagement, and they're not scared or impulsive because of a car pulling up, but they'd rather have more engagement with bicycle police. And then the last thing I'll say is I think that we need
10
more
seconds.
park safety in our communities, in our parks that are specifically for parks. You know, we see park safety driving around the city, but I think that they need to be
That's time.
in our parks and in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kennedy, unmute for your 2-minute answer on how to keep the city safe.
Well, first of all, I have a real background as it relates to being a former deputy chief of police in a community that had the highest murder rate in the United States. It was in the top 10, and that was in Richmond, Virginia. I was deputy chief of police for administrative services, which was a civilian position that had the training, the hiring, computer services, property and evidence, all of the areas of policing that are pertinent in terms of helping a new police chief understand their role vis-a-vis the community. It is great that we're going to select a new city manager, but we also have to let that city manager know that we need the right type of police chief to serve over our police department and the young men and women who serve the police department. We have a great police department. Are there some issues? Are there some bad apples? Probably yes. But the supermajority of our police officers go to work every day in and out and do a great job for this community. As it relates to the violence or the uptick of violence, the kind of violence we have seen in some respect has been random, and that's the most difficult violence to arrest. So what it's going to take is the community engage with the police department, see something, say something, and we actually get results when that happens. To all the families in District 3 who has lost loved ones in this kind of senseless violence, our heart goes out to you in a serious way from not just me,
10
but
seconds.
from the whole community. We have the opportunity to teach intentional civility amongst our young people. We must do that. It has a positive impact.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lamar, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal.
Thank you. I'll say that if the expertise was present, we wouldn't have all the shootings that we've been having in our district. And I think I say that with all due respect. We've had too many shootings, one too many shootings. And at this point, just like accountability with our officers, our community has to have accountability with our community. Enough is enough. There's too many shootings that has taken place. And lives are at stake. Lives are literally at stake. I lost a cousin last week from gun violence. These are lives and they're at stake. And we have to do something, not after the 20th shooting. We have to do something after the first shooting. And so, you know, I appreciate everything that was said, but we have to do more than what has been done because lives are definitely at stake at this moment.
Thank you. Councilmember Kennedy, a 1-minute rebuttal.
No question about it. Something more must be done, but you have to recognize that we're dealing with ghost guns, the plethora of guns that are on the streets. We also need to recognize that the city of Pasadena had the forethought to hire Mark Sutton, Ricky Pickens, and DeAndre Scott, men who have real life experiences that can serve as interventionists to interrupt the violence, to talk to the young men and women who are engaged in this violence and show them that there's another pathway forward. Yes, we have park safety officers now because the city council approved them yesterday, Monday. Also, it has been my mission, not of late, but since I've been on the council, to tell our
10
police
seconds.
officers, you must get out of your police vehicle, engage the community in conversation to make the community safer. That's just common sense.
Time.
And I'm still demanding that, and it will occur.
Thank you. Now to Councilmember Rivas for your 2-minute answer on how to keep the city safe.
Thank you. And I'll start by apologize. I had a little bit of a distraction during the last question. Hopefully that won't happen again. First, in the short term, whenever an incident happens, or just in general, as we're dealing with these situations, there's a number of things that we need to do, and when we have been doing, and that includes violence interrupters and gang interventionists who do make a profound impact in reaching out and having those conversations with folks, cooling temperatures down and making sure the cycle of retaliation has a stopping point and we don't see the back and forth continue. Temporary increased patrols we see often immediately after an incident. I think those are important to watch out for any additional flare-ups that may happen. I know neighbors are very encouraged to see those. And additional limited surveillance, when it calls for it in very specific and limited situations, I think that's appropriate. But I think it needs to be limited. I don't see it as a prolonged or permanent thing, but in response to a situation that's happened. But I think we also, and I'm sorry, before I move on, also park safety officers, which are part of our budget this year to add 2 more. And I believe one of them will be dedicated permanently or full-time or spend the bulk of their time at Villa Park in my district. And I think that's really, really crucial to have that presence there in the park, a positive presence, not an officer with a gun, just someone who's there to be around and have eyes on what's going on and establish those relationships with the neighbors who are in the park on a daily basis and really get to know people. I think that's really important, having our officers and park safety specialists just be there in the park on foot and walking around and getting to know people. All those things are great, and we're going to do those when we need them. But we have to recognize that those are not solutions to the underlying problem. In the long term, we have to work to ensure that our city is one where everyone can thrive and where
10
young
seconds.
people are not drawn to gangs or violence in the first place to stop this cycle. And that is a matter of good jobs and affordable housing, which I'm sure we're going to get to in one of our next questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Lyon, for your 2-minute answer.
Thank you. Violence is a function to a greater or lesser degree of hopelessness and despair. And so there are the actions that we can take on the pre-violence side to try to combat hopelessness and despair. And then there are the actions we take in the post-violence side to create safety and stability. On the pre-violence side, and this is the side where I think our work really, really ought to be focused. We're a city with a public health department. We're in the midst of a national and local mental health crisis coming out of the pandemic. And we should be taking that on in a proactive and affirmative way. We should be partnering with community organizations for intervention at the earliest possible level, because I think despair sets in early in communities of need. And so as quickly as we can show opportunities that are meaningful and real, the less likely that a kid ends up in a violent situation. I think on the policing side, on the post-incident side, it is critical that officers are visible in the community, not just in their cars, but on the streets, in the parks, and getting to know people. And we are a long way right now from having most of our police department regarded as trusted partners in the community, but that's where we need to be. While we are such an unaffordable city, that's hard to do. Not one Pasadena police officer lives in the city of Pasadena. And in part, that's because this city is not affordable. If officers were our neighbors, we could begin to build a different kind of relationship. And I do hope we get to the affordability aspect on this with the next question.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shea, unmute for your 2-minute answer.
Wow. All I can say is wow. The discussion is not that complicated. It really isn't. I mean, I'm hearing people all over the floor. Basically, the police department needs to have a good relationship with the community. A good, easy outreach program, transparency. Those things mitigate some of the attitudes and experiences that the residents in these impacted community has to deal with just from the police. Then if we look at the side of economic disparity, and I hope people are very sensitive, because the way some of this stuff is coming across is not taken very well. People want the best in life, but when there is inequity, you're not going to get it, and there's going to be reaction. The best way to curb that is start with respecting people and presenting opportunities to where everybody can have the same quality of life. That's how I grew up. If you respected me, you respected your neighbors, we all win. Pasadena lost that somewhere because we're having these kind of discussions. Those were not the discussions when I was growing up. And the reason why is because we had true community. We had public servants, we had police who served to protect. We had leaders who actually led and not had self-interest in mind. Those things are imperative to have a strong community, and that's why I'm running.
10 seconds.
I've seen this all my life, and I continue to know that it does exist. It doesn't require all of this speculation. You just do it. Make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon, you have the option of a 1-minute rebuttal.
No rebuttal.
Mr. Shea, would you like to take your 1-minute rebuttal?
I absolutely would. There is no greater city in America than Pasadena. And it will only stay that way if we continue to vote in leaders and people who have a passion for this community to make sure it stays a great community. That's why I'm here tonight, to make sure you hear that and act on it with your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Now back to Moderator Gordon.
Thank you. That's Mr. Gordon or Martin. Thank you. We will move over on to question 7, and that will be Brennon Dixson.
What's up, everybody? Once again, my question is number 7. Gentrification is running rampant in communities across Pasadena and Altadena, both part of Pasadena Unified. Some fear it is tearing apart the fabric of our close-knit communities. Give us your thoughts on how we can ensure longtime community members remain in town and how we could possibly use the phenomenon to improve communities and schools. Councilman Kennedy, please unmute yourself and provide a 2-minute answer.
Well, first of all, I don't believe that you can use gentrification to increase or to make things better. Gentrification is a reflection of affordability. People, irrespective of race, they live where they can afford to live. And what we're seeing in Pasadena is 2 couples, some nuclear, some same-sex couples coming into Pasadena who have very good incomes, 2 incomes, and can afford to live in a city where we're seeing the median price for a home to be somewhere close to $1 million. This is unbelievable, historic, never seen in the history of Pasadena. But what city government can do is provide resources to make housing more affordable in the city of Pasadena. Specifically, we had a program called Neighborhood Housing Services that provided silent seconds for people to buy homes, particularly first home buyers. Also, there's a program called NACA that will provide the down payment for those individuals who will go through a pre-ownership program and finish and receive a certificate. Having that certificate oftentimes allows you to get the down payment for a house, whether it's in Pasadena or in the county of Los Angeles. I don't see gentrification as something positive. I see gentrification as something that the community as a whole needs to work to prevent occurring so we can keep
10
the
seconds.
great diversity that exists in the city of Pasadena. And I hope there'll be other opportunities to address this issue a little bit more in depth. Thank you.
Mr. Lamar, please unmute yourself and provide a 2-minute answer.
Thank you. I think we have to preserve the culture of Pasadena that we have, the diversity of the culture that we have in Pasadena. And for the last 10 years or more, we have seen more people move out of Pasadena than ever before, who've been born here, raised here, and ultimately just cannot afford to live here. And I say that about myself, especially as a millennial who is, now has a fiance and one day would like to buy in Pasadena. I know that right now we're not in a position to do so. Even with 2 incomes, even with 2 great jobs, we're just not in the position to do so. And so I think that we have to create more opportunities for people to be able to stay here. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is to endorse the rent control. We have to have rent control in Pasadena to keep people housed here. And I think I encourage everybody. I know some of you all have been doing it, some of you probably have not been doing it, but I encourage you to go out yourself and knock on doors and canvass and talk to your neighbors and see those neighbors who can barely afford to pay their rent. See those neighbors who was thinking about either paying their rent or buying food for their family, paying their rent or buying clothes for their family. There's people out here who just cannot afford to live here in Pasadena, and it is a shame, and we have to do something about it, and we have to do something about it now. My whole thing is I welcome everybody to come to Pasadena, but more than anything, I want to find a way for the people who are already here to be able to stay here and live here comfortably, not only to pay their rent. And the thing that we have to think about is people are not only paying rent and mortgages, but we also have car notes. We also have insurance. We also have to buy groceries. We have all these things that we
10
have
seconds.
to pay, and rent is just too high currently, and we have to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamar. Mr. Kennedy, you have a 1-minute rebuttal.
Well, when I was a kid, there were 24,000 African Americans living in the city of Pasadena. Now there are less than 10,000. And in large measure, it always has been a question of affordability related to that. As it relates to rent control is a well-intentioned bad idea. The explosive increases in rent is worrisome for all of us and a destructive, life-altering event for those priced out of the market. It creates tremendous pressure to intervene in a direct way to control and limit further increases. State law imposes a ceiling right now on the annual increases, but that is not restrictive enough for proponents of more rigorous local rent control. However, virtually every academic review of rent control as a technique to
10
improve
seconds.
housing conditions has concluded that it is a well-intentioned bad idea. Thank you.
Mr. Lamar, you have a 1-minute rebuttal if you would like.
Thank you. I think for me, rent control is an amazing idea because there has not been any other solution that came to the table to help renters. And I think that's what it is. Until we have another solution to help renters to stop making rent go up so much more, over 8%, 9%, then this is the only solution that we have on the table. And, I understand that more affordable housing is being built, but also these affordable housing, some of these are under 500 square feet and the family can't fit in those. So we have to have affordable housing for everyone, not just for one group, but for everyone. And I think that's so important. The next thing I'll say is, there's been this combat between landlords and renters. And I think what we really have to do in the city of Pasadena, what I would like to see is for us to create a
10
program
seconds.
for mom and pop landlords to help them to be able to to help them to sustain their units while also keeping it affordable by making a promise to keep it affordable for Pasadena. And there's more conversation that can definitely happen within that. Thank you.
Thank you too. Councilwoman Rivas, will you give us on your thoughts on how we can ensure longtime community members remain in town and how we can improve communities and schools for them?
Yeah, keeping Pasadenans housed is absolutely one of my top priorities. And I mean that in 2 ways. Of course, we don't want people to fall into homelessness, which is a big topic, and I'm sure we'll get into it. but also keeping them here in Pasadena. Young adults who grew up here, working families, and seniors are being pushed out of Pasadena by our insane housing prices and rents. This is unacceptable. So I am proud of what the city has done recently over the past year to convert existing market rate housing to workforce or middle income housing. And we should continue to be open to new and innovative approaches like this. So through that process, we were able to convert over 1,000 units of really nice market rate housing. And those rents were instantly brought down to levels that middle income renters can continue to afford moving into the future. So we're talking about people like teachers and construction workers, tradespeople, young professionals, folks that traditionally make too much for affordable housing or traditional affordable housing, but can't afford to buy a home, can't afford the market rate rent. So I'm really excited that we were able to do that. And I hope we continue to explore new ideas like that. I also support the ballot initiative for rent control. I view it as a common sense way to keep Pasadenans housed in our community. It's simply going to limit rent increases to 75% of inflation every year, which will typically work out, I guess in a normal year, maybe not this year, but around 2 to 3%. And those are reasonable amounts that people can afford and that don't amount to de facto eviction notices, that's what pushes people out of our city. So those are a few items that I would like to continue to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We move over to Alan Shay. Will you please unmute yourself and ready for a 2-minute answer?
Well, I think this is a very complicated question, and I speak from a political scientist perspective, also a licensed real estate broker for over 25 years, business owner over 40 years. And the reason I say that is because the gentrification phenomenon is a result of demand. If the leaders in Pasadena cannot create some kind of equitable sustainability for African Americans or minorities, that's just going to be a natural evolution. And I'm sorry to say. And I say this because that was one of the reasons I became a commissioner for 4 terms in the Northwest, was to try and stabilize that and to test it, to go through recessionary cycles to see how people can retain their homes. And I had to negotiate with a lot of lenders for people to keep their homes and do a lot of begging for folks not to sell their homes so they can stay a part of the community. But even with all of those efforts that helped to sustain, we still lost a lot. And that comes because we have to find a formula that works. And until you get leaders who have a lived experience with those type of incidents, with those type of cycles, it's not going to change. And you have to be in tune with history. The only time that African Americans became middle class was only because of the push between 1948 to 1968. So after the 1967 Fannie Mae bill was passed, then Blacks were able to afford houses, get decent jobs, and become middle class. If we're ready to implement those type of movements again for the next 20 to 40 years, so be
10
it.
seconds.
I don't think that's going to happen. We're going to have to look at ways to be creative, and you need people who understand that. So that's why it's so important to make sure people think clear on how to approach it. Thank you.
Mr. Lyon, you are unmuted. We are ready for your answer.
Thank you. I think the lack of affordable workforce, so-called workforce housing, is the biggest issue facing the city today. We are losing economic diversity by the day. And if we don't have economic diversity, we don't have workforce diversity. And eventually we can't be a thriving city if that happens. We have 75,000 workers in the city, and the vast majority have to live outside the city, which means they have to come here from further and further away. That has economic impacts, that has environmental impacts, and eventually it means that people are not going to want to work in the city if they can't get here easily. And we have to address it. I've been out knocking on doors for 8 months and talking to voters, and I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, oh, I wish I could vote for you. I'm moving out of the city. And not just renters, it's homeowners, it's condo owners, it's renters of apartments, renters of single family homes, can't afford to live in the city. We need to address it. The issue of gentrification is one that I have dealt with a lot as the vice chair of the Planning Commission, and one that we try to confront. We still very clearly see the lingering effects of redlining in this city. The red line is traceable across the city, and trying to offset those effects without creating neighborhoods that are ripe for people of greater means to come in and swoop up is a difficult balance, and one we try to take on all the time in our zoning. I will say gentrification is the reason that I have so strongly opposed SB 9, which is the bill that allows a single family lot to be split into two and then a duplex built on each. It doesn't require any units to be affordable. And what we're going to see is neighborhoods getting bought up and converted to more expensive housing. Thanks.
Mr. Shea, we are ready for your rebuttal if you would like to provide one. 1 minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, housing, gentrification are difficult issues. Affordable housing issues are divided in so many different ways. I would get into it a lot with the housing department on how it really functions. If you're trying to create affordable housing for minorities, then, in my opinion, there needs to be an assertive effort to make sure that's the intended purpose. If you're just trying to create affordable housing for the general public, that's another facet that should be focused in on. Without really zeroing in on a real campaign or strategy, you're going to lose in both ends, because even if affordable housing is created and it goes to people who are not Black and it goes to whites, then you're going to get the gentrification. If you want Blacks to stabilize themselves, there's got to be a mechanism in place.
That's time.
Thank you.
Mr. Lyon, would you like a rebuttal?
I would, thank you. I don't think we're going to get to the number of affordable units we need in this city without public investment in affordable housing. Right now, our system of 80% market rate with 20% affordable units is not making a dent in our need for workforce housing. So I think we need public investment at the federal, state, county, and city levels in affordable housing. And then we need to figure out where we're going to put housing. So that's along our transit corridors, where we can take more density, along our major thoroughfares. But for this city, I think the biggest answer is going to be in coming up with a comprehensive adaptive reuse ordinance so that we can convert existing underutilized commercial space, retail space, institutional space, and industrial space
10 seconds.
into housing that is affordable at every income level.
Thank you. And I believe we are ready for the lightning round with Mr. Chapman.
Great. So these are 30-second answers with no rebuttals. Do you support giving priority for moving into the 710 freeway, so-called stubland, to Black and Asian households, many of whom were pushed out of the area when the property was acquired by the state? First up, Mr. Lamar.
Yes, I do. I do believe that it should be priority for them, for us, times 1,000.
Thank you. Councilmember Kennedy.
Absolutely. African Americans, Japanese Americans, and Latino Americans received the butt of what was called urban renewal, which was just really Negro removal, Latino removal, and Japanese American removal. We have 52 acres that are going to be reappropriated to the city of Pasadena. It presents an opportunity for this city to actually do justice, and we must do it. This is our opportunity to show the world that justice can be done
10 seconds.
in the city of roses. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Councilmember Rivas.
Yes, absolutely. I know the city, we are already doing something similar with our affordable housing priorities, and we have a pilot program that prioritizes folks who have been pushed out. So I absolutely believe that same idea should apply to anything built in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon.
I do also support including anyone who is from a community that was historically disadvantaged by the 710 eminent domain action. That doesn't necessarily mean offering the existing units, which I understood you to ask, to anyone, because those units are going to need
10
a long
seconds.
conversation. They're historic units, but they are largely in great disrepair.
Thank you. Mr. Shea.
You want to repeat your question because I had a phone call come in while you were.
Absolutely. Do you support giving priority for moving into the 710 freeway stub land to Black and Asian households, many of whom were pushed out of the area when the property was acquired by the state?
I do. I'm one of those recipients, or I should say, one of those victims. I'll put it that way, who experienced that because we actually lived off of Pasadena Avenue when we first moved to Pasadena and had to move because of that. The 17 coming in. I just would hope that
10 seconds.
In theory, we can talk about it, but in practice, we can carry this out to be a true mission that Pasadena has achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we're going over to Brennon now for the next lightning round question.
Hello, my question is short and sweet. Do you support rent control? And we are heading back to Alan Shea.
Well, my take on rent control is that the voice of the people need to make that determination. I say that because we've put forth a statewide rent control. And from my analysis of looking at value, I look at market value. And I also look at market value when we have a down system.
10
When we had
seconds.
the recession, we had lost 50% of the value and we reduced our rents down to that effect. I think renters need to understand that if that were to happen in reverse, they would still
That's
be
time.
stuck with their current contract. Thank you.
Mr. Lyon, we are ready when you are.
I do. I was a strong proponent of putting this measure on the ballot. I think reasonable minds can disagree about rent control. There's a fair amount of data that suggests that over time, it actually takes rents above market. But at this moment in time in Pasadena, I think what we need desperately is stability and predictability in rents. And until we come up with a system that works
10
better,
seconds.
and we have a proposal that actually provides for the needs also of housing providers, I think this is a reasonable solution at the moment.
Mr. Lamar, over to you.
Yes, I do support rent control, and I support rent control 100%. And until there's another solution that has been brought to the table, I think this is the only solution that we have right now in regards to rent control. I think that we have to have something to be able to keep our neighbors here. And this is the step that we have currently. And I'm glad to be able to say
10
that
seconds.
my campaign has supported to help gather signatures and was the first person on the candidacy to actually endorse this rent control. So I definitely appreciate that.
Time.
Ms. Rivas, do you support rent
Yes.
control?
Yes, I've endorsed the rent control campaign, and I'm just proud to be an advocate for renters who make up the majority of District 5 residents and the majority of our city.
Mr. Kennedy, do you support rent control?
No, I do not support rent control. It's a well-intentioned bad idea. I do believe my initiative to build 3,000 affordable units with 15% of those dedicated to the extremely low income will have a better impact than rent control. Rent control reduces construction of new supply and discourages investment, and that's not something that we want to do. It
10 seconds.
discourages in reinvestment, maintenance of supply, but limiting return for owners, thereby damaging housing conditions. We can do better.
That's time.
I will send it back to Mr. Chapman for the next lightning round question.
Thank you. Should affordable housing be allowed and encouraged on church property? First up, Mr. Lamar.
Yes, I do think so. As we've seen, and especially after COVID, we don't see the same amount of people going to churches. We don't see the same amount of people using buildings, commercial buildings. And so my answer is yes. I think that it should definitely be used for unhoused or unused church locations.
Thank you. Councilmember Kennedy.
This is part of the Great Commission. We have an opportunity to be a part of the Great Commission by allowing church and other ecumenical lands be used to build affordable housing. Absolutely, the whole community of Pasadena needs to get behind this effort. Period.
Thank you. Councilmember Rivas.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was grateful to see that this passed through the Planning Commission a week or two ago and will be up at the council, I believe, on May 23rd. So I'm very eager for this to come before the council.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon.
Yes, we have been working for 2 years in the Planning Commission to come up with a sound, workable, and viable plan to create housing on religious institution lands. And hopefully it's a program that we can, a model that we can expand to institutional lands like colleges in the near
10
future.
seconds.
I will say with the religious lands, there is an important First Amendment consideration that we got to make sure that these facilities remain manageable. And we came up with a solution for that as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Shea.
Well, my 4 terms as Commissioner of Northwest to try and empower a means in which affordable housing can be created for those residents in Northwest. If we're talking in general to the city of Pasadena, we're adding another dimension to it. And if we're talking about people of color,
10 seconds.
Another challenge. When it comes to what are we going to do and how we're going to do it, I think we need more specifics because these things are just being thrown out and not really clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. And back over to Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Justin. My question for Mr. Shea first is, how can Pasadena do its part, combat climate change and conserve water?
Well, I think we're moving forward with that in that direction. We've reduced our watering down to 2 days a week now. I see a lot of people in District 7, especially when I'm out walking every day, walking and bicycling. So those are the first steps. If we start looking at where we're going to be in 2025 with electric cars, that's going to mitigate the emission from our engine vehicles. So we're working toward it.
Mr. Lyon, how can Pasadena do its part to combat climate change and conserve water?
So this is a major component of my campaign and a thing I really care about in the city. The first thing is that we need to step up the timeline to getting to a majority renewables portfolio. We're on track to do that by 2030 now. I think we can do that as much as 4 years sooner without a great cost to the city. We have traditionally created and then shut down conservation incentive programs because no one uses them, because no one knows about them. So we need things like gray water conversion programs. We need a better solar buyback program.
That's time.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lamar, please share your thoughts. 30 seconds, sir.
Thank you. I agree. I do think we need to promote and expand our conservation programs. I think that we need to expand our food recycling programs to not just homeowners, but we have to find a way to expand them to also apartment and multifamily units as well. And then I also think that we definitely have to build more charging areas. And of course, I mean, I sweat a lot, so I need a lot more trees. So we need trees, a lot more trees in the city of Pasadena so we can have shade.
Councilwoman Rivas, how can Pasadena combat climate change?
Well, when it comes to power production, we have to continue push to shift our reliance on fossil fuels to renewable energy and to make sure we are trying to push that forward as quickly as we possibly can. When it comes to water, we of course have to encourage more conservation. We have to capture more stormwater to replenish the Raymond Basin, our groundwater. We have to maintain our infrastructure, which is aging, and we need to explore new methods to conserve water, like I believe Jason mentioned in terms of recycling and gray water use. So those are a few things we need to focus on.
John Kennedy, 30 seconds to share your thoughts, please.
I wrote the original recycling ordinance for the city of Pasadena. The whole objective is to reduce the carbon imprint, and that's what we're doing. We must get people out of their cars, and so we must build housing around transit so they don't need a car. We need to move quicker to 2030 in terms of obtaining our renewable energy from renewables and enact zero waste in the city of Pasadena. That would do greatly to reduce the carbon imprint in the city of Pasadena. Thank you.
Back over to Justin for another question.
Thank you very much. Did the city drop the ball in the way it handled Cheryl Moody and Jason Clausen serving as interim police chiefs? First up, Mr. Lamar.
You guys would do this to me. Yes, I mean, ultimately, I believe that Cheryl Moody should have been in place as our next police chief because she was next in line. So you go up the order. If she's deputy, then, you know, she goes up in line. But at the end of the day, we have to trust who we put in place.
10
and
seconds.
So the city council have put somebody in place and this was their decision. And we have to trust that. And so if we want a different decision, we have to have different leaders.
Thank you. Councilmember Kennedy.
Absolutely, we dropped the ball. There's no question that Cheryl Moody should have had an opportunity to be the full acting chief of police for the city of Pasadena, just like John Perez had that opportunity. There was no reason for bifurcation. I did not support it privately and I did not support it publicly.
10
And I
seconds.
think she should have had that opportunity and she was not afforded that opportunity. And why would she want to report to one of her subordinates? Jason Clausen was one of her subordinates.
Thank you. Councilmember Rivas.
So that was a policy that our interim city manager applied across the board, not just with the police department. So I know it was also with the assistant city manager position and also with the HR department head and perhaps maybe another department head that I am misremembering or not remembering at the moment. So I was fine with that approach. I understand there were concerns, but I was fine with having a rotating interim.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon.
I also liked the concept of the rotating interims for all the departments that lost, and we lost a lot of department heads at the end of last year. In the police department in particular, because of the seniority issue, I think there was a question about why the order wasn't flipped, which may have accommodated Chief Moody remaining longer into the role. But other than that, I didn't mind conceptually having different people fill the interim role.
Thank you. And Mr. Shea.
Well, I absolutely think the city dropped the ball. I think they've set a new precedent as to how they're going to conduct promoting and bringing in interim personnel in the future. And I think what they could have done is taken the high road and just allowed Cheryl to just carry out this interim period so that it can reflect that we are in unison as a city and our community is recovering from the crisis that we experienced in 2020 and we're still experiencing now.
That's
so
time.
I believe that they truly dropped the ball.
Thank you. And back over to you, Brennan.
Thank you, Justin. My question is, should we have an elected police chief? And the first answer will be from Mr. Shea.
Well, that's a difficult question because ideally, yes, But from an administrative and from how the charter exists, it makes it quite cumbersome. And then we have the culture of our city and how it's structured. All of those things would have to be reassembled, I'll put it that way. And I just think, if we can do that, that would be great, but the reality of it is it's not gonna happen. Thank you.
Mr. Lyon, should we have an elected police chief?
No, as we've seen with the battle between the sheriff and the county supervisors right now, it really creates an impediment to true management by the what should be the top level of government. So no, I think you can't really there's the inertia of being the incumbent
10
office
seconds.
holder that makes it very difficult to get a person out. And so, no, I would not support electing the police chief.
Mr. Lamar, should we have an elected police chief in Pasadena?
No, I don't think so. I think if we have accountability in our city council, if we have accountability in our city manager, if we have accountability with our city, our police chief, I think we'll be just fine. So I don't think that we need to have an elected city chief. I think that we have to do a better job at holding each other accountable.
10 seconds.
It's self-accountable and also city accountable.
Thank you. Jess Rivas, should Pasadena have an elected police chief?
Well, I appreciate the idea of having more direct accountability. I think that's always a good thing. I am hesitant to politicize that role. And we see it with our neighbors in LA County and just what's going on with the sheriff and the board of supervisors. I would hate for that to happen here, where literally you have the sheriff and the board of supervisors suing each other. We don't need that here.
Councilman Kennedy, should Pasadena have an elected police chief?
Absolutely not. We cannot politicize policing in Pasadena. What we can do is make sure that we have the right city manager who has the right skills and experience and appreciation of the community to make the right selection of our next police chief. Simple.
Thank you. Over to Justin for another great question.
Thank you. In the wake of the economic impact of the pandemic, how can Pasadena afford to pay for such high-profile, however extremely expensive, projects such as easing the Rose Bowl's debt and restoring the Central Library? What are your ideas? Be specific. Mr. Lamar, you're up first.
So for me, I think that we have to do what we have to do in order to, help the Rose Bowl out. I'm glad that, we're not in that position anymore, but I think that we should have spent more money on mental health services for our families in Pasadena. I think that we also should have spent more money to help families in Pasadena to sustain them and to help keep them sustained throughout this process. And then, I think, there's so much more that we should have done, but we just didn't do.
Thank you. Councilmember Kennedy.
For the Rose Bowl, we have to rethink how we garner the revenue to pay off those $200 million bonds. And we must re-envision the whole Rose Bowl operation and all of that corridor. And then as it relates to the Central Library, something that could cost over $100 million, we must look at it as our Notre Dame and invite the billionaires that exist in the city of Pasadena to participate in helping us finding the resources to do the retrofit on our Central Library, an extraordinary asset.
Thank you. Councilmember Rivas.
Yeah, for the city as a public entity, getting our finances in order while recovering from COVID and dealing with these two challenges, this is our biggest hurdle. So as it comes to the Rose Bowl, I agree with Councilmember Kennedy. We really have to be open to as much as possible to address that huge shortfall that we're seeing. And so that's going to be coming before the council, I believe, also this month. As for the library.
10 seconds.
I know we're considering, bringing it to the voters to increase to a small amount our taxes so that we can all chip in and pay for it that way. And so we need to get voters' input on that.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon.
On the Rose Bowl, the Rose Bowl debt is the city's debt. So it's not as if we can opt not to pay it. We have to pay it. So I think we need to have a really frank public conversation about what we're doing with the Rose Bowl. And I don't think we do our city any favors when we deliver the message from the city that it's fine, it's all good, we're good. Which is the message we keep getting out of City Hall. On the library, I was glad to see that the contract requires a second opinion. We've not yet gotten a second opinion on the engineering and whether even all of that repair is necessary. And part of the program is re-envisioning what a library can be if we're going to rebuild it.
Thank you. And Mr. Shea.
Well, I believe I've had conversations with former city manager on this very issue and the department heads on our finances of the Rose Bowl improvement as well as our current debts. And I believe that there are funding sources out there that could retire a lot of that debt if the city is receptive to entertaining the new concepts or new opportunities that are out there. If they continue to rely on what we had in the past, then we're going to be struggling with this debt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And back over to Brennan.
Hello, guys. Final lightning round question. Do you support creating a tiny home village in Pasadena to provide short-term housing for people experiencing homeless? We'll send it to Brenda Lamar first.
My answer is yes. Not only that, but I've helped place people in tiny homes in San Fernando Valley. And so I know that it works and I know that it's possible for it to happen. I think that this is a solution to help our homeless population. Not only that, but I think that we should build temporary housing through repurposed motels as well that we have throughout our city.
10 seconds.
That as well. So I think there's a lot of things that we could do and that we need to do, and we need to do it now.
Mr. Kennedy, please unmute yourself and provide your answer.
We need a multidisciplinary approach, and we need the community to weigh in specifically as it relates to tiny homes. But I'm offering an opportunity for us to end homelessness in Pasadena when you take that 15% of the 3,000 units that will be built and dedicate those to the extremely low income. Only in my district are we building
10 seconds.
Housing for the formerly senior homeless at the corner of Orange Grove and Fair Oaks, where you formerly saw the Church's Chicken. That's in my district. I have to advocate for that, and it's being done.
Councilwoman Rivas, do you support a tiny home village in Pasadena?
I do, especially because I think the pandemic really shined a light on the limitations of our emergency shelter situation. So we typically contract with Friends Indeed to provide a bad weather shelter. With COVID, we couldn't do that. So we had to rely on motel vouchers, which are not ideal for a whole number of reasons. And so we just didn't have any other options. And so I think tiny homes can fill that gap. And so I'm eager to see that come before the council soon.
Mr. Lyon, do you?
There is no question that we need transitional housing in this city. We really don't have a viable mechanism for transitional housing. For me, I would rather, at the moment, focus on making our existing motel conversion ordinance work, because it doesn't work. It's never been used. And then we need a really brave and patient public conversation around other mechanisms. I think we rush into things and we then end up backing down when the public opposes them.
And Mr. Shea, final answer of the lightning round, please.
Well, I believe that we need some type of transitional housing for the homeless. I don't know if the tiny housing concept is going to be feasible, especially as it evolves. I think we should focus in on something that's going to create a sustainable model so we can learn how to eradicate the homelessness while living in a good quality, while being in an environment that's giving them hope and guidance and the type of care, whether it's mental or physical, that will give them a quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Mr. Gordon, please take over.
Don't make me take over. I have a lot-
Please, I'm begging you.
Thank you. And we are getting close to a little after 8 o'clock. We want to respect everybody's time. There's just one more question and then we'll close out. This is the last call. The question is, what didn't you get to say tonight? What is the most important thing voters should know about you before casting their votes? You have a 1 minute answer, and then we'll be closing out. We'll start with Mr. Lamar.
Thank you. I'll take 10 of my seconds and just say I think Caroline did an amazing job. And I think Mark has some competition on his hands now. But without that, I think that there's so much that needs to be done in Pasadena. There's so much work that has been done. But I think we need more progressive voices to take it to the next level. And when it comes to housing, when it comes to lowering crime, when it comes to accountability, I think that we have to do a better job at it. It saddens me that some people, and it's all of our right, it's democracy, that some people don't really support rent control, even though that 62% of renters are of Pasadena. And there's not one person that I can say that I know of, if I'm wrong, then correct me, that is an actual renter on city council. And I think that we need that voice on city council
10
of people
seconds.
that can support this community. So thank you so much. I hope I can earn your vote. I hope I have earned your vote. And I hope to see you in city council chambers.
Mr. Kennedy. Unmute yourself.
Thank you for listening to us this evening. As I seek re-election, I'm honored to be endorsed by Congressmember Judy Chu, Assemblymember Chris Holden, Supervisor Catherine Barger, 4 of my colleagues, including Ms. Rivas on the City Council, the Council Federation of Labor, BizFed, PAC, LA League of Conservation Voters, the Southern California Armenian Democrats, ACT, the Arroyo Democratic Club, and the Star News, one of the conveners of tonight's event, LA Sentinel newspaper, and the Police Officers Association. I believe I've earned the support because of my results, experience, leadership, just keeping it real. Yes, we have accomplished a lot, but we have more to do. There's only one candidate in District 3 equipped to do the job, and that is why I want to continue my work on the City Council on your behalf to take this city even to higher heights. Working together, we build one Pasadena. Thank you.
Ms. Rivas.
Over the last year, I've been really honored to represent my district, and I've been able to be one of the most progressive voices on the council, and that's exactly what I'm going to continue to do. And so I look forward to earning the votes this time. I was honored to earn the votes of my colleagues to be appointed to the council, and I look forward to earning the votes of all my neighbors throughout District 5. And more than just earning your vote, I really look forward to continuing to work with you. Just last night, I think I mentioned earlier, I was at a neighborhood meeting, talking to residents, really getting deep into the issues and brainstorming on what we can do to improve our neighborhoods. And so that's what I'm really excited to continue doing. So I look forward to earning your vote and continuing to represent you on the council.
Mr. Lyon.
I'm running for city council in District 7 for 2 reasons. One, because I love this city. I come and sit down at this desk every day and look at, you can't see it now, but the dome of City Hall and the crest of the San Gabriel Mountains out my window, and I feel incredibly fortunate to live in this amazing city. That's the first reason I'm running. The second is that I think we need a different kind of leadership throughout our country at every level of government. We have lost a spirit of servant leadership in government where someone steps up to be of service to their community for a finite period of time and then steps aside. And I'm stepping up to offer my service around some issues that I think I can help with. And I have some specific, very specific proposals about how to make a difference in our city and improve our city for everyone. Those are on my website at jasonlyonforpasadena.com. And I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Shea.
Well, with all due respect to the organizers of tonight, I thank you for this platform. And I would say to the voters in District 7, I absolutely love Pasadena. I love our district. I have served the district for over 35 years. And what I know that I bring to the table is true lived experience so that your voice is heard every Monday. And I can assure you, with your vote, you will not get anyone who can advocate your interests as I can. And I know that because this is what I've done since the age of 7. And this has always been my life dream, is to serve the residents of Pasadena, starting with the residents in District 7, which we needed. We need to restore South Lake Business District. We need to restore our East District over by Allen in Colorado.
That's time.
We need to make sure that public safety is number one because of all of the crimes that have taken place that a lot of people don't even know. And I
That's
learned
time.
of this in my walk every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Alan. Listen, our time is actually run out. We did pretty well. To keep on track, we're about 13 minutes over. I'd like to thank all the candidates for being here tonight. I have to tell you that I've done these quite a few times. This was a very good event. I wish you could all be on the council. We need this kind of leadership. We need this kind of well thought out answers, and I really enjoyed it and appreciate it. I want to thank the Star News. I want to thank our panelists today, and also Caroline. You did do a wonderful job of making sure that we stayed on track. I'm sorry this had to end. We have some more questions I'd love to hear y'all answer, but you did a great job tonight, and thank you so much for participating in this event. Good night, all.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Sincere thanks, everybody. It was a wonderful evening. Terrific. The city's lucky to have all of you running.
They left us, Tom.